Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Can you hear me?
I can. I can hear you fine.
Thank you for your time. Go ahead. You watched Bob Mueller and your reaction to what he said.
Well, I don't think it's much of a reaction. It just repeats the report. He had no evidence or insufficient evidence, which is the same thing for a prosecutor, of collusion. And although he couldn't reach a decision on obstruction, that's a decision. When a prosecutor can't reach a decision, that's the decision. So there's no case on obstruction. There's no case on collusion. Then when he goes on to discuss the DOJ policy, well, we all know that's the DOJ policy. I mean, when I first met him, he was a little unsure about whether he could indict or not. But obviously he can't. We all know that. But he still looked at his opinions in the report. And the report is 430 pages of opinion. So the reality is, and he offered his opinion on collusion, he offered his opinion on obstruction. His opinion on collusion was there is no case. His opinion on obstruction was that he couldn't conclude that the president committed obstruction.
Yeah, two things on that, Rudy, if I could interject here. Insufficient evidence on Russian collusion. What does that suggest to you when he concludes it that way? And do you believe that is stated any differently than in the Mueller report?
No, I mean, there are all different ways of saying it, but the reality is that's what a prosecutor does. When he added this notion of exoneration, it's completely foreign to American law. I mean, you had to have learned that somewhere in the Soviet Union, that you have to exonerate somebody. I did it for years. I never exonerated anyone. I found, is there enough evidence to bring a charge or isn't there? If there's not enough evidence to bring a charge, end of case, case is over.
So why does he use this, as a lawyer now, why does he use that language, insufficient evidence?
Because because I believe spending all that time with people like Weissman, he's lost his notion of American fairness. I mean, I think it's to me as a lawyer, it's astounding that he's expounding on can we exonerate or can't we exonerate or can't we do this or can't we do that. The reality is he doesn't have a case. He doesn't have a collusion case. Doesn't have an obstruction case. I mean, if he was constrained by this Justice Department rule, then why did he do the investigation at all?
When do you believe he knew that there was insufficient evidence?
No, I think that's a reason maybe he doesn't want to be questioned. I mean, I think the Republicans would have a field day with him. I think he concluded that a year before. In fact, I think it's going to come out in the next couple of months that the investigation never should have been started in the first place.
Are you suggesting this was April or May of 2018?
Well, I think when Papadopoulos fell apart, they knew they didn't have a case.
I don't know when that date was. When was that?
Well, I don't know exactly when, but it sure as heck was about a year before they reached or filed their report.
On the obstruction charge here, he said based on long-standing guidelines, the president cannot be charged. Now, you fought for a year to make sure that President Trump did not sit down with Bob Mueller or anyone on his team. You did submit answers on paper, question and answer, back and forth, but no face-to-face interview. He's making the case that a sitting president cannot be charged. What do you think of that?
Well, okay, that is the law. I mean, a sitting president can't be charged. So then, if that's the case, then why did he offer all those opinions? Why did he offer all those recommendations and suggestions? Why did he investigate? Because the reality is that he gave us his opinion on collusion and obstruction. And his opinion is you can't bring a case. Bob, that's the end of it. That's what a prosecutor does. And you don't prove negatives. I mean, it's almost impossible to do that. And what they've done here is a perversion, a combination of him and the media. And I'm surprised at Bob because he's a better lawyer than that. I don't know where this notion came.
I apologize for the interruption. I just want to squeeze in a few more questions while I have you. Have you spoken to the president in the past hour?
Well, I don't comment on that.
Okay. Well, did you speak to him last night? Because apparently the word was the White House knew Bob Mueller was going to make a statement today. Were you aware of the material or what Bob Mueller was going to say?
I thought he would do what he did. I mean, he basically repeated his report. I mean, it's the same. It's a 5-minute version of his report, and this whole. What did he say? He said, "I don't have a collusion case, and I don't have an obstruction case." He says slightly different things about it, but that's the conclusion, and that's all that matters from the point of view of a prosecutor. It's a real question as to whether it's ethical at all for him to be discussing it or writing about it. Yeah. Once you conclude that you can't bring a case, the rules of ethics say, as a prosecutor, you got to keep your mouth shut. And of course, they did 430 pages of regurgitating every possible thing they could regurgitate, much of which was unfair.
Well, you know that Democrats will go forward, possibly.
I don't see what this does for them.
Well, here is the statement from Jerry Nadler. It just came out. All right, here we go. On screen. He says, given that Special Counsel Mueller was unable to pursue criminal charges against the president, it falls to Congress to respond to the crimes, lies, and other wrongdoing of President Trump, and we will do so. No one, not even the President of the United States, is above the law. End quote from Jerry Nadler.
Well, I mean, Jerry Nadler just proved that he shouldn't be the chairman of that committee by saying Jerry Nadler has figured out already, without an investigation, that he's going to respond to the crimes of the president. I mean, even Mueller didn't say that. Mueller said he couldn't reach a conclusion. Jerry's already reached a conclusion. I mean,
how real is it?
Something as sensitive as
how
this.
Real is
somebody
it?
Like that shouldn't be sitting as the judge, who's already. I mean, this is like saying, you're guilty. I'm going to hang you. Let me give you a trial now. I mean, Jerry Nadler has gone so far in showing his prejudice that it's totally intolerable that he's the chairman of that committee without coming to the conclusion that it truly is a witch hunt.
How real is it that they move forward on impeachment?
I don't know how real it is, but I'm not. That's being handled by the White House counsel. But from my point of view, unless Nadler is removed and they put a chairman on there who at least hasn't made all sorts of prejudicial comments and shown that he's made up his mind that a crime has been committed when nobody else has made up their mind that a crime is committed, I would think their investigation is illegitimate. It's a misuse of congressional power.
It is Thursday, the 30th of May of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh, you've come to the right place for a bit of spice in your life. We shake it up and grind it in and rub it out, and hey, what do you get? Well, absolutely no Russian help in getting Donnie elected. He didn't help the Russians help him. He didn't. Now, he deleted that tweet because, at best for him, it's a Freudian slip. Does he even know what a Freudian slip is? No, he doesn't. And do we believe in that? Well, I don't know. You don't ever hear about Jungian slips, do you? Do you? Listen, this guy's been guilty from the get-go. We all knew it. We all saw it in real time. And their strategy is to gaslight over and over and over. Until, well, look what's normal now. Look what is normal. The things that would have sunk a presidency before, like getting rid of the USS McCain from the line of sight of Donald Trump when he was in Japan on Memorial Day, thanking the Japanese for killing a bunch of our troops in World War II so we could celebrate Memorial Day. What a weirdo. All right. Let's not forget about the fake sumo trophy, too. The President's Cup. Give me a break. Leave it to golf, Donnie. Leave it to golf. So, yes, that would have sunk most presidencies, taking the USS McCain out of the line of sight of Donald Trump while he's there in Japan on Memorial Day. I still don't get it. I mean, some presidents would go to Hawaii, to Pearl Harbor, and have a ceremony there for the USS Arizona. But no, Japan. I still can't get over that part. But yeah, so somehow Monkey Mucks and the U.S. Navy agreed to it, which I thought was a way to get you busted down several ranks. Several, not just one, several. Oh my God. And you might even lose your pension. So what's normal now? That's normal. And we've known that this traitor to the Constitution has been guilty from the get-go. And now the roosters and the chickens have come home to roost. Yes, well. Rudy Giuliani at the top there is part of this gaslighting operation. Now, he is well practiced. He and his lobby shop have been working in the former Soviet bloc for a few decades now. So he has honed his skills in the Soviet model, the old Soviet model. And it's being put to fair use here. Fair meaning good? Good. Evil use, at least. But we shall say in a utilitarian way that has been somewhat effective. A Trump voter who went to Justin Amash town hall was shocked that Mueller had so many negative things to say about Donald Trump. Why was this Trump voter shocked? Because they followed up that with, I only get my news from conservative outlets. Sinclair Broadcasting? Local man? Obviously Fox. How many more are there? And that's just the broadcasters. We're not talking about all the local conservative newspapers. Shocked. There were so many negative things about Donald Trump. The gaslighting works on a particular segment of this society. I still maintain, when the sleeping giant awakens, it will not go well for Donald Trump. And I hear a rumbling from the slumber. We all do. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays, by the way. Well, a leaked British Army guide for spotting far-right extremism in the ranks fits the behavior of some leading U.S. conservatives, including the guy who did not get any help from Russia. The leading voices in Russian election and infrastructure interference efforts in the U.S. rally in support of Maria Butina. Hey, professional courtesy, isn't it? And a curious question arose from the special counsel's statement that has yet to be answered. Why did Mueller only resign now? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where an attempt by Brazil's far-right president to weaken environmental laws protecting the Amazon forest has failed. and failed utterly, by the way. And Israel faces a second election in just a few months as Netanyahu fails to form a government. Couldn't have happened to a more despicable personage now. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page is the link to our Patreon area. So if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, Resistance Radio can keep on resisting as the founders originally intended for another 8 years. Yes, indeed, we are in our 8th year of continuous broadcasting, 24/7, 365, and we would be unable to do this without you. What comes out of our pockets goes a long way, but what you provide for us in a recurring Patreon, as a recurring Patreon, has really been instrumental in allowing us to continue this endeavor, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. If you could afford a latte, coffee-type drink once a month, that indeed goes a long way in helping us pay our bills and also accumulate the funds that we need to purchase new-ish machinery, since these workhorses have been working as a horse for so long, they're starting to wear out, as the previous machines did just about halfway through this endeavor so far. So once again, thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so easy to do, and please do. Go to @Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and we are forever grateful that he does. I take care of Justice Putnam, and that's @Justice Putnam. And I also post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime and put those links out on social media. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so @CookbookWest and get podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Mixed in with all the rest, that's where we are. We're all the rest. Indeed. Well, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Luke Barnes of Think Progress brings us this first offering here. A leaked British Army document designed to help officers spot potential extreme right-wing behavior in the ranks includes warning signs that mimic the language and behavior of many mainstream conservatives in the United States, including Donald Trump. The 20-box chart, first reported by BuzzFeed News, warns officers to be on the lookout for individuals with a range of behaviors, including describing themselves as patriots and their political opponents as traitors, using fake news to demonize immigrants, railing against the supposed dangers of multicultural towns and cities, and threatening violence when losing an argument. The British Army confirmed that the document was genuine, but a spokesperson stressed that the document was not meant for general circulation. Of course not, it's for officers' eyes only. Rather, it was drawn up in response to a specific incident, the arrest of 4 soldiers in 2017 for being part of the banned neo-Nazi group National Action, and to provide guidelines for the chain of command in hopes of preventing any similar instances in the future. Oh, in other words, it's exactly what it purports to be. While the document is not a guide for determining far-right extremism in the United States, because, I don't know, right-wing extremism on an international level is different? No, not quite. But Luke Barnes goes on to say if it was, it likely would not have described themselves as patriots as an indicator, bearing in mind how popular the term is across the country. Read broadly, it does match many current mainstream U.S. conservative tropes and demonstrates how often right-wing conservatism overlaps with more troubling behaviors. Whenever a Trump bro, say like in my family, calls themselves a patriot, I correct them and say, no, you're a loyalist. Loyalist to the cause against the United States, because they are no patriots. The document, for instance, warns about the use of blatantly untruthful or incorrect references to immigrants. Boy, you would never find anybody in a chain of command in our military. I mean, look at Mattis. Look at Kelly, the most bigoted, racist. I hated those guys. That's not to say the whole of the military is a bigot racist like Mattis and Kelly. But there's enough of them, and they've been around for a while. Both Trump and his allies, such as Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, have falsely claimed that migrant caravans in Central America are funded by George Soros, who happens to be Jewish, by the way, and pushed other debunked talking points to rile up Trump's base. And it did. The guy, who was it? What was it? Giuliani accused Soros of funding something here recently for the resistance in the United States. Weird. The guide also warns against individuals who become increasingly angry at perceived injustices or threats to so-called national identity. Both Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, have argued that immigrants are replacing Americans. They're replacing us. An indirect reference to the great replacement conspiracy theory, which claims white culture is being overtaken by non-white immigrants and notably helped radicalize the alleged far-right shooter who attacked 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand earlier this year. Alleged? There's no alleged about it. We have to say that, though. Trump alone ticks off many of the boxes included in the Army Guide. Among them is threatening violence when losing an argument, although claiming that extreme right-wing groups protest peacefully. Trump regularly strokes violence against his political opponents at his rallies and has claimed on more than one occasion that violent white nationalist protesters at the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville were simply there to peacefully protest the removal of a statue of Robert E. Lee. You know, with clubs, guns, bombs, Molotov cocktails, running around at night with tiki torches, surrounding a synagogue, yelling, "You will not replace us. You will not replace us." Very fine people. Very fine. The U.S. military is far from immune from this sort of radicalization. In a 2018 poll, around 1 in 5 members of the military said they'd seen signs of racist ideology or white nationalism within the ranks. And in February, federal agents arrested a Coast Guard lieutenant who had drawn up a hit list of prominent journalists and politicians. And he is currently being detained pending trial. Casey Michelle from Think Progress brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, an upcoming press conference in Moscow to support jailed Russian agent Maria Butina will bring together some of the most notable voices in Russian interference efforts over the past few years, from the leading figure organizing American secessionists to a sanctioned Russian social media operator. The press conference, scheduled for next Tuesday, will be hosted by Alexander Malkovich, a sanctioned Russian disinformation operative who helps run a Russia-based foundation for the protection of national values. The foundation describes itself as a non-profit organization whose activities are aimed at protecting the national interests of the Russian Federation, including the preservation of traditional culture. You know, a nesting doll and a nesting doll and a nesting doll. Don't forget the beats. Do not forget the beats. Malkovich is best known for helping create a disinformation site called USA Really. Malkovich was previously linked to media operations also led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a sanctioned Russian official close to Vlad. Prigozhin, known as Putin's chef, helped oversee Russia's social media interference operations through 2016. Now he's back to cooking. Well, he was joined by Alexander Ionov, a Russian lobbyist who in 2015 and 16 organized multiple conferences in Russia aimed at American secessionists. Ionov's anti-globalization movement of Russia helped fund travel to Moscow for secessionists from Texas, and later provided rent-free space in Russia for California secessionists from the Yes California group. The group used the space to open up their embassy of the Independent Republic of California. Duma Deputy Vitaly Milanov, one of Russia's most notorious anti-LGBTQ voices, will also be speaking, as will Butina's dad. The press conference will focus on fundraising for the Russian agent, who was recently sentenced in the U.S. to 18 months in light prison activities. 18 months for a spy. Well, okay, so acting as an unregistered foreign agent working for Russia. Yeah, I like to call her a spy working for a hostile foreign power. Butina's operations included infiltrating the NRA, the National Rifle Association, so yeah. A lot of laundered Russian rubles from the NRA in the pockets of a lot of the GOP, wouldn't you think? What else did she do? Well, attempt to influence American policy while working closely with Russian official Alexander Torshin, who has also been sanctioned by the U.S. for playing a key role in advancing Russia's malign activities, according to the Treasury Department. Now, Malkovich told Think Progress that Butina will not be making a video appearance at next week's press conference. What? I think American officials working in the prison system will punish her if she joins by video. We don't want to make bad things for Maria. What? You can video conference from prison now? Boy, I want to see how much that calling card costs. Well, however, Malkovich wants to be sure viewers tune in nonetheless. As he said in the release announcing the press conference, there will be surprises. And there always are surprises with Russian active measures. Cody Fenwick of Alternet brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. While the substance of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's remarks on Wednesday yesterday are receiving the bulk of the press's attention, there's a curious question that arose from a statement that has yet to be answered. Why did Mueller only resign now? Mueller had officially concluded his investigation on March 22nd when he delivered the final version of his report to Barr. After that, Mueller stayed on at the Justice Department, it seemed, to help oversee the release of the report, reportedly helping redact significant sensitive portions of the text. But once the report was released on April 18th, it wasn't clear what work was left for Mueller to do. It was only on Wednesday, more than 2 months after completing the report, that Mueller officially announced his resignation. Another development Wednesday is a key to the case that had been under Mueller's purview and suggested a possible explanation for his final departure date. As CNN reported, a former Mueller prosecutor, Aaron Zelinsky, revealed in court on Wednesday that a witness tied to Roger Stone has finally agreed to testify before the grand jury. Stone is currently awaiting trial for charges Mueller brought against him, which include lying to Congress, obstructing justice, intimidating a witness in the course of the Russia investigation, among other charges. And there have been hints that there are other charges looming over Stone, the most prominent hint being Mueller's effort to get his associate, Andrew Miller, to testify before the grand jury. Miller had long refused to testify, and he was held in contempt by Judge Beryl Howell for his refusal, but he has been appealing the decision. Now, it was revealed in court, Miller has agreed to testify on Friday, this Friday tomorrow. And that suggests, though it is far from certain, that new charges might be coming against Stone. Zelinsky spoke privately with the judge on Wednesday to explain why Miller's testimony was still needed. The Miller testimony was one of the outstanding threads in Mueller's investigation that was still pending when reports first suggested that the Russia probe was wrapping up. Mueller seemed to intensely value the testimony, going to aggressive lengths to force Miller to testify. It's possible that the special counsel had some role in the ongoing efforts to get Miller to testify. And once that he had finally agreed to appear before the grand jury, Mueller concluded it was time to step down. However, as Vox's Andrew Prokop noted, there's another outstanding thread in the investigation that has yet to be resolved. Mueller subpoenaed a company owned by a foreign country in the course of his investigation, and the company fought the subpoena all the way to the Supreme Court, where its appeals were denied. We still do not know what will become of that case, or even which country is implicated. I forecast and predict that we will. Oh, we most certainly will. Okay, let's get to our break. And when we come back from that break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Some parents get overly involved in their kids' personal lives, but bonobo mothers take this tendency to the extreme. They fix up their adult sons with a female of their choosing, and they even keep other males from getting near their future daughter-in-law. The behavior may seem overbearing, but it boosts the odds that they'll be surrounded by grandkids. That's according to a study in the journal Current Biology. Researchers studying wild bonobos in the Congo noticed that some females behaved a bit like males, fighting over fertile females and fending off some of the males who come a-courtin'. That observation struck primatologist Martin Surbeck as odd.
So I just wondered, hey, what is it actually of their business? No, it seemed most of the mammals, it's just a male business, this competition over the access to females.
To get to the bottom of this unusual activity, Surbeck, who's currently at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, got DNA samples from the players in this melodrama.
And so it became more apparent when we did the paternity analysis, and it turned out these females were mothers of some males. And in this female-dominated society of bonobos, the mothers act kind of like a social passport, allowing their sons to be more central in the group and therefore having more opportunities to interact with other females.
And after the moms introduce their sons to the most desirable ladies, they make sure the couple won't be interrupted. As a result,
we found that males have about a 3 times higher likelihood to sire offspring while their mom was still alive in the community.
In contrast, mothers of the closely related chimpanzees don't chaperone their sons. In fact, male chimps are less likely to sire offspring when their moms are around. Seems that chimps prefer privacy for their monkey business. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Quote, the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion. Who said that?
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
That would be the same person who said that Russia interfered by carrying out, quote, a social media campaign that favored presidential candidate Donald J. Trump and disparaged presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, and by utilizing, quote, a Russian intelligence service that conducted computer intrusion operations against entities, employees, and volunteers working on the Clinton campaign, and then released stolen documents, end quote. The same person who said that the Russian entity called IRA, the Internet Research Agency, conducted, quote, a social media campaign designed to provoke and amplify political and social discord in the United States. And then went on to say, in total, that Russian agency, quote, controlled accounts that made over 80,000 posts, which may have reached an estimated 126 million people, according to Facebook. The person who said all this is the special counsel Robert Mueller. So when we think about what is necessary to protect American democracy in 2020 and beyond, we thought it useful to hear what the special counsel actually found.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union, because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. It was a day that would become known as the Memorial Day Massacre. 10 demonstrators were killed by police bullets while protesting at Republic Steel on the southeast side of Chicago. U.S. Steel, also known as Big Steel, had signed a contract with the Steel Workers Organizing Committee, part of the CIO. But several smaller companies, known as Little Steel, refused to recognize the union. This included Republic Steel. The union called for a strike against Little Steel. In Chicago, sympathizers from all around the city gathered on Memorial Day at Sam's Place, a bar where the union set up its strike headquarters. After a round of speeches, the crowd began a march across a field toward the Republic Steel mill. They were stopped midway by a formation of well-armed Chicago police officers. While demonstrators at the front of the procession argued for their right to proceed, police mercilessly fired into the crowd and tracked down people as they fled. Molly West, a typographical union Local 16 member and a youthful demonstrator at the time, remembered hearing the police scream, "Get off the field or I'll put a bullet in your back!" Newsreel footage captured the barbaric and bloody scene. The state's attorney exonerated the police and their assault. But a federal congressional committee found the police had indeed used excessive force. Today, there is a sculpture commemorating those who were killed. The sculpture was created by Ed Blazek, a former employee of the Republic Steel Company. It features 10 steel pipes, each representing a smokestack of the 10 steel mills that once operated in the area. They also represent the 10 demonstrators who were executed for the crime of wanting a better life.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
If we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
Well, that's a voice we hadn't heard before. Special counsel Robert Mueller appeared before the cameras Wednesday for the first time since his investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 elections began 2 years ago. Mueller announced the official end of the probe, the closing of the special counsel's office, and his resignation from the Department of Justice. He made it clear that he didn't want to testify before Congress and said that if he was ultimately called to testify, that he would not speak to any matters beyond what was covered in his report, saying, quote, "The report is my testimony." In his remarks, Mueller made it clear he didn't pursue obstruction of justice charges against Trump based on his findings because Justice Department guidelines didn't allow him that option.
We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. The introduction to the Volume 2 of our report explains that decision. It explains that under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional. Even if the charge is kept under seal and hidden from public view, that too is prohibited. The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
Mueller's statement contradicts the narrative of Attorney General William Barr, who has been accused of mischaracterizing the report and the Mueller team's reasons for not bringing charges against the president. As you can hear in a side-by-side comparison, their differences are stark.
The Deputy Attorney General and I concluded that the evidence developed by the special counsel is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense.
If we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
Mueller also made it a point to both begin and end his comments about the report, stressing that the United States was attacked by Russia, and they're still doing it.
And I will close by reiterating the central allegation of our indictments, that there were multiple systematic efforts to interfere in our election. And that allegation deserves the attention of every American.
Mueller's statement also gave more fuel to the cries for impeaching Trump. But so far, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler are resisting the call, but they are saying nothing is off the table.
With respect to impeachment question, at this point, all options are on the table, and nothing should be ruled out. What Special Counsel Mueller said loud and clear today to the American people is that President Trump is lying when he says no collusion, no obstruction, and that he was exonerated. No one is above the law, and we will hold the president accountable.
Robert Mueller, in his nuanced way, explained that the matter should be turned over to Congress as the Constitution offers impeachment as the way to proceed.
The opinion says that the Constitution requires a process other than the criminal justice system to formally accuse a sitting president of wrongdoing. And beyond department policy, we were guided by principles of fairness. It would be unfair to potentially accuse somebody of a crime when there can be no court resolution of the actual charge.
The White House responded by continuing its gaslighting campaign, Trump tweeting, quote, "There was insufficient evidence and therefore in our country," with a capital C, "a person is innocent. The case is closed. Thank you." Yeah. No, that's not how this works. In reality, Mueller said the lack of charges should not be interpreted as innocence.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime.
Sarah Sanders backed up Trump's lies, saying, quote, "The report was clear. There was no collusion, no conspiracy, and the Department of Justice confirmed there was no obstruction." In other news, as if we didn't already know, apparently orange skin is very thin. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the White House wanted the USS John McCain out of sight during Trump's visit to Japan, citing texts and emails between U.S. Navy and Air Force officials and a U.S. Indo-Pacific Command official. From the Wall Street Journal, quote, "A tarp was hung over the ship's name ahead of the president's trip, according to photos reviewed by the Journal, and sailors were directed to remove any coverings from the ship that bore its name. After the tarp was taken down, a barge was moved closer to the ship, obscuring its name. Sailors on the ship, who typically wear caps bearing its name, were given the day off during Mr. Trump's visit," people familiar with the matter said. Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan said, "I never authorized any action around the movement or activity regarding that ship. Furthermore, I would never dishonor the memory of a great American patriot like Senator McCain. I would never disrespect the young men and women that crew that ship."
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 57 degrees Fahrenheit, slated for a high in the, low to mid-80s. I think we'll be more in the mid-80s. Overnight lows in the mid-50s, and tomorrow again will be in the low to mid-80s for a high. No chance of rain, small chances of rain tonight and tomorrow, though I think it will be pushed away, though one can always hope. Winds are light and variable out of the southwest, and will be shifting out of the northwest, northwest in about an hour and a half or so, and will be at a clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour, as it has been for the last several days. We'll shift out of the northwest tonight, remaining at 5 to 10 miles per hour, then back out of the north-northwest tomorrow at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Almost a scouring wind. Okay, so sunny conditions will prevail, and grass pollen is very high. The air quality index is in the moderate range of 53 parts per million, not so good for those with breathing problems like my dear elderly mom, who I should add is recovering nicely from her tumble where she cracked her head and had to have a couple of stitches, lacerated her ear. Darn you, lady, get into a bar fight and have that done. Don't be toppling. But she's doing well and has recovered nicely and is back to work that I'm trying to keep her from doing. Lady. Alrighty. Well, the daytime UV index is very high at 8. It was at 9 yesterday, so come down a little bit. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.76 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 74 and cloudy. Paris is 69 and cloudy. Rome is 67 with rain and a weather advisory for disruption of the power grid because of heavy rains. Kiev is 78 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 75 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 75 and cloudy. Tokyo is 72 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 49 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 53 and cloudy. And New York is 63 degrees Fahrenheit with fog and a weather advisory for heavy fog. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees out of Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An attempt by Brazil's far-right President Jair Bolsonaro and lawmakers backed by Big Ag to weaken environmental laws protecting the Amazon forest and other biomes has failed, as Congress will not vote into law a decree that weakened existing legislation. Government whip Senator Fernando Bezerra said that a temporary presidential decree, 876, which required congressional approval by Monday, would not be put to the vote before then. The decree was sent to Congress by former President Michel Temer, but embraced by Bolsonaro and many in the country's powerful farm lobby. It would have extended by a year the deadline for landowners to comply with maintaining or replanting minimum forested areas on their properties. You know, forest management is very important. If you take a tree out, you should plant another tree. It's only common sense. But I suppose if you want to create a shortage so you can make more money, you might just collapse the whole economy, and why not the environment with it? However, earlier this year, lawmakers tacked on amendments that critics said had turned the decree in practice into an amnesty for landowners who collectively had deforested about 12 1/3 million acres in recent years, an area slightly smaller than Costa Rica, without the beaches, too. Some agribusiness companies worried about the bad image the loosening of the law would give Brazilian products in foreign markets joined environmentalists in criticizing the amnesty in the Brazil Climate Forest and Agriculture Coalition. Bolsonaro has worked to ease environmental controls to facilitate agriculture and mining in the country since he took office. Mining? You mean digging a pit? An open-air pit? Come on. Environmentalists say that threatens the Amazon rainforest. considered by scientists as nature's best defense against global warming because the trees absorb vast amounts of greenhouse gas.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers. C'est tout.
Jeffrey Heller and Dan Williams of Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Israeli lawmakers voted to dissolve parliament today, paving the way for a new election after veteran Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu failed to form a coalition government before the midnight deadline. Netanyahu preferred a new ballot set for September 17th to the alternative under which President Rivlin could have asked for another politician to try and form a ruling coalition. But the need to go to the polls again so soon after a closely contested April 9 election in which Netanyahu had claimed victory showed a new weakness in a leader who has been in power for the past decade and who has become the face of Israel for many. Potential indictments in 3 corruption cases have only deepened questions about his political survival. We will win, Netanyahu, head of the right-wing Likud party, vowed after Parliament voted when the deadline expired for him to assemble his 5th government. However, he was looking over his shoulder at the Likud benches during the vote in what some commentators interpreted as concern about any last-minute revolt. Not a single Likud lawmaker wavered in voting for an election. With coalition building potentially stretching into November once the election is over, the uncertainty seems likely to delay further Donald Trump's forthcoming plan to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Don't worry, Jared is there. At the White House, Trump voiced regret at the political turmoil in Israel and praised Netanyahu, with whom he has been in lockstep in tough policy towards the Palestinians and Iran. It's too bad what happened in Israel. It looked like a total win for Benny, who's a great guy. He's a great guy. And now they're back in the debate stage, and they're back in the election stage. The crisis arose officially, at least, from a feud over military conscription between Netanyahu's presumed allies, ex-defense minister and far-right secularist Lieberman, and ultra-Orthodox Jewish parties. Those parties want young religious scholars exempted en masse from mandatory national service, but Lieberman and other Israelis said they should share the burden. Faced with the prospect of having to step aside at the end of a 42-day post-election period allowed for putting together a government, Netanyahu instead drummed up support to dissolve the Knesset. And I'm getting reports that that is indeed what has happened. All right, let's, we're at the end of our broadcast period for the day. You know the Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and they'll bring this news and all the other breaking news, so stay tuned. We'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.